Hi, it's about 5 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, August 15th, and I am on the Central Oregon coast right now. I actually have the door open. It's storming outside, and I can't resist when we're at the ocean. I need the sea air to be coming in, so I hope there's not too much wind noise in this video. I just sent my husband out to grab sushi. Last night we had fish and chips from, if you're ever in Depot Bay, this place called the Sticks. They have the best fish and chips, and it's an absolute steal. $16, and it was enough to feed my husband and I both. I don't really like chips. I don't like French fries very much, but they were excellent. But tonight I sent him out there's a little place here in Depot Bay that has both Korean food and sushi. I'm having a scotch in a hotel disposable cup. I actually thought about going to one of the little tourist shops and buying a little glass, a little snifter or something. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't. But we did go up north of Depot Bay. There's a little bead shop, Beluga Beads, and I got some beads up there. The owner was really lovely. Y'all, really lovely. If you're on the Central Oregon coast, you should stop by. I know I've said this in videos before, but we used to live in Secede, Oregon, which is just the middle of nowhere. There's one stop sign. Well, when we lived there, there was one stop sign in that town and no stoplights. And I have a tremendous amount of fondness for rural Oregon. But it's very true. I think people have this misconception that Oregon is very blue, and it's not. Outside of the major cities, it's very, very red in a lot of places around the state. And we could discuss how that's because Oregon is very much a white supremacist state. Right? We had racism baked into our constitution until I think like 1968 or something. Sundown towns all over Oregon. And also just because there's a tremendous amount of poverty in rural Oregon as well. And the Republicans have done a very good job propagandizing to poor white folks in rural places. And the Christo-fascists have also as well. I know I've said it before, but the most racist place we've ever lived was rural Oregon. And it wasn't actually the little hamlet we were living in that was the issue. It was the next town over, which was a white mill town with a lot of poverty, a lot of substance abuse, high teen pregnancy rate. And there's a lot of that on the Central Oregon coast. People who have very much seasonal work in logging or fishing, people who work at the mill. It's just a lot of rural Oregon is very, very economically depressed. Not a lot of opportunities for folks here. And the Republicans have done a very good job in these very white communities at seeding, kind of planting, or stoking already existing racism. The alt-right and the oligarchs have done a fantastic job of scapegoating people of color, getting white people to vote against their own interest using racism, convincing working class white folks who are struggling that the real cause of their suffering, the real reason that the American dream eludes them, the real reason that they can never seem to get ahead, they're always just barely keeping their heads above water, is not because the super rich are exploiting all of us. It's not because the oligarchs are living high on the hog and they are not paying their fair share of taxes. They are not paying us livable wages. They are denying us things that we very easily could fund and afford here in this country, like universal health care, like free college, like paid maternity leave, and paid paternity leave as well. The political right, combined with the super rich, have done a great job of teaching working class white folks that their enemy is not actually the folks who are doing the oppressing. Instead, it's other people in the working class who don't happen to be white. They've done a great job of pulling the wool over conservative working class folks' eyes so that they don't understand that there's no war but the class war. And I think because of that, we see so many corners of rural America. We see so many red states where working class folks vote against their own interest. The folks in Pennsylvania is going to get me really mad. Union folks in Pennsylvania voting for Donald Trump, supporting Donald Trump. How can you not understand? You're a union member. Do you not understand what the labor movement is about? Do you not understand how Donald Trump wanting to regress this country to a time when there was less worker safety? Workers had fewer rights, there were fewer protections for you. How Donald Trump wanting to go back to the Gilded Age is all about making sure that we have robber barons in this country again who are screwing over the people that work for them, polluting the shit out of the planet and making our lives absolutely miserable. I will never understand how a union person could vote for Donald Trump. I have union members in my family, blue collar, working class, union members in my family who voted for Donald Trump. We're talking like fucking electricians and tool and die makers, folks working on the line at Delco Remy, voting for Donald Trump, voting for their own oppression. And because of that, I think it can give those of us who are very comfortable in blue states, especially in blue cities where we have our preconceived notion about the flyover states and about rural America, we can kind of sit in judgment and think like, this country is so divided along red state and blue state, and falsely believe that the vocal white folks in these red states are representative of everybody that lives there. Every time somebody says this country is divided and we are moving towards civil war, when I hear my mutuals saying things like Cascadia should just break off from the United States and join Canada, or California should secede because it's like what, the 5th largest economy in the world, and the rest of the US is fucked if we don't have California's tax base. Or when I hear something like this, most of the Northeast is civilized enough to simply break off from the United States, God willing. All of y'all need to button it and sit down. You are speaking out of your privilege and you're speaking out of your ass. You don't know what rural America is like. You don't know the level of indoctrination and also the level of struggle. The way working class people in red rural America have been propagandized all to shit and exploited by the oligarchy. Their racism has been stoked and stoked and stoked. They lack the same kinds of resources and education and lived experience and worldview you do. And until you live in a community that's like that, I think it's very difficult to understand how those folks have they're living in a different reality than you and me. I'm not excusing their support of Donald Trump. I am definitely not excusing their racism. But they're still Americans, and they're still being fucked by the oligarchy. They're still being fucked by the Republicans. And let me take it one step further. When you say shit like the blue states in the Northeast, or California, or Oregon and Washington, again, you don't know what rural Oregon and rural Washington are like. If you think that like we're the good ones because our states went for Kamala Harris. Take a look at that map outside of Portland, Salem, and Eugene, even heck a lot of Salem. While we're at it, take a look at California. There were something like 6 million Californians that voted for Donald Trump. More folks in California voted for Donald Trump than folks in Louisiana or folks in Arkansas. Yet you sit there and think that California should be immune to the consequences of this country electing Donald Trump because the red votes in that state were buffered by the blue votes. Okay, for all of the red voters in California, you don't consider, when you look at California and see a blue state, I want you to think about all of those blue voters in all of those red states where there is active voter suppression, specifically targeting Black voters. Voters are disenfranchised all to hell in these red states because we know that Republicans cannot win unless they cheat. So they cheat so hard in red states. We already know most of them have their congressional maps gerrymandered all to hell. You know, they make it as difficult as possible for certain demographics of folks to show up and vote. We also know that tens of 100+ million Americans live in red states that did not vote for this and do not want this. And I will remind you all one more time, no child in the United States voted for Donald Trump, and there are children in every single state. So when you say you want collective punishment, when you say that red states deserve to suffer, when you say blue states should just break off and the red states, good luck, y'all. You are abandoning the most vulnerable in every one of those states. I had a trans woman from Texas in my comments earlier today saying like, please don't forget us. There are children, there are blue dots in all of those red states, millions and millions and millions of them. This is not the time that we abandon them. If you think those red states deserve punishment, then you need to go unpack your desire for retribution and collective punishment because it's really fucking toxic. And it is also causing the most vulnerable, who are most impacted by the horrible things Donald Trump is doing, to be punished the most. Black folks in Georgia, Louisiana, Arkansas, trans folks in Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, children in poverty in all of those states. You think that we should just abandon them? Then you need to sit down and reconsider where your values are. Reconsider whether your position is actually upholding the things that you voted for when you voted for Kamala Harris. Okay, my husband just got here with dinner, so I'm gonna go eat. I realize I sounded a little scoldy, but I mean it, y'all. Think real hard about what you're saying when you're saying that we're about to have civil war and it's gonna be blue state versus red state. There is still no war but the class war. I know there are a lot of folks who are currently real deep in their indoctrination, but please, at the very least, consider all of the blue dots and all of the children in those red states. Think about how we can have solidarity with them.